be with you guys. First of all, I want to thank Becky and Monique for having me here today. I'm so honored. I also want to give kudos to all of you guys that are here because you're playing full out, you're participating. You're like, man, I want to get better in my business. And so guess what? You showed up today and you're here. So I'm just so proud of you for just showing up in such a big way. And I am going to do my very best, guys. You know, this topic, building through seasons, oh my word, this could be like a whole day training. But guess what? We got stuff to do, right? We have jobs that we're part of. We have kids to raise, all of that good stuff. And so I am going to spend the next 20 minutes with you, and then we're actually going to open up for a little bit of Q&A. And here's the thing: if there's any questions that you're, dying to get answered and you didn't, guess what? We all love social media and we're all connected there, right? So feel free to hit me up in Messenger. I'd be more than happy to support you, however best that I can, and answer any of those questions that we have. So like Becky talked about, I live in Minneapolis. My husband and I, we actually build together for the last 18 years. But actually before that, I also built by myself. And so it was a really unique experience as we kind of like decided to start working together, and here we are. And, it was just so, I think one of the things like for me that was so interesting was that, as I just started growing as a person, like there were so many things that, started to just change and just help me kind of step into my best authentic self. Hold on, I'm just changing this to gallery. Okay, there we go. And oh, Becky, I don't know if you want to do you want to spotlight me just so that I can everyone, otherwise I feel like I'm a tiny, tiny box. Okay. And I'm a little bossy, so I apologize. But anyway, so here's the thing, guys. When I got started in the business, I was a nanny. I really had no business being in business. I was 21 years old. I'm going to be 50 in September. But I tell people every day, I never really got involved because of the money. I never really got involved because I thought I could build a big team. I just really wanted to be somebody. I felt that, when I was first introduced, I fell in love with the people. I fell in love with the possibility of what could be, right? Like the dreams and all these things that we have, right? I know, think about, for those of you that, when you first saw a presentation, maybe it was in someone's living room, maybe it was a video link, maybe it was in a Facebook group, maybe whatever it was, right? Think about, that feeling of those possibilities. And I fell in love with that. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love this feeling. And I love just the potential time freedom and financial freedom that I might be able to have. And here's a funny thing is I am definitely an overachiever. And I thought right away, right out of the gates, that I was going to hit the ground running and it's going to be awesome. But let me tell you, I went through this school of hard knocks because I had a lot of, garbage inside of my brain that I had to overcome. And all of us are women on here. A lot of it's stuff that we carry around for a long time. It's the limiting belief stuff. Am I good enough? Can I do this? Who's going to listen to me? Right. All of that just junk. And it took me a while to drop it off and be done with it and to take on new, beliefs and a whole new belief system of for me, right, as a person. And so, it's so crazy as, I'm hearing Becky talk about my bio, my first 3 years in network marketing, guys, it took me 3 years to enroll one person. 3 years to enroll one person, right? So some of you guys that are watching, you're like, oh my God, I have bio, right? And you're like, oh, I don't really know if I can do this, or, oh my gosh, I could never be her. Let me tell you, all of you guys are just like me. All of you guys are just like me. And, the thing that I always encourage people to remember is that we all have our own story, and our own story is so beautiful. And your story is going to relate to people that I'm never going to I can relate to, right? Monique has a story that other people, are never going to be able to share. And so is Becky, right? And so, that's really the beautiful part about network marketing. It's just really the story of just the stories of just so many incredible women, right? From just great backgrounds and, just life journeys and all of that. And, building in seasons is really interesting because, once you kind of really understand conceptually what that looks like, I think a lot of times worry tends to go away. Frustration tends to go away. A lot of these things that I think easily creep up on our business where we want our business to grow faster, or maybe we hit a plateau, or maybe our business is in a decline, right? Or maybe we're in a dry spell where we haven't been able to bring anybody on board, right, in a long time, or no one wants to book a party or whatever it is, right? Because I know we've got, lots of different companies represented. But I think that, I look at, when I first launched my business, like that first season, for me was really getting after it, right? And really launching it in a big way. And I always share with people, there is a difference between joining something and launching something. Okay. Unfortunately, most people, they join. They think they launched, but they join. And meaning they didn't, think about like when a rocket, right? When a rocket takes off, like how much energy and fuel and exertion does it take to get that thing off the ground? A lot, right? And that's the same thing with our business. It's kind of like a plane, right? Imagine if a plane, when it took off, like, can it just go, a quarter of a throttle and catch air? No, right? Can it like go half and catch it? No, like it has to go all the way down, right? It has to go full throttle. Most people are not willing to go full throttle. And so because of that, that's why they're like, my business isn't growing. I don't have a good story. I'm not getting any sales. And it's really kind of like dipping that toe in the water. Now, I do feel personally that I think a lot of people make the mistake where they think, well, I'm not full time, so I can't launch. And I'm like, listen, that time has nothing to do with launching. I've seen people that have launched a business that have been extremely, extremely part-time. I'm talking 5 to 10 hours a week, and they've launched and they have successfully launched in a big way because the time that they did put in, they were very effective. They were super laser. They had blinders on. They were really focused with the things and taking the actions they needed to do to move their business forward every day. So I think you got to kind of look at maybe you're on here today and you're like, I'm brand new, like I just joined my business, right? If that's you, I want to encourage you to really kind of take inventory. I take inventory a lot in my business, just so you know, like probably every other day. I'm like, I take inventory. I'm like, okay, where are you at, Sarah? Where are you at? But for me, I would encourage you, like, look at it and go, okay, have I really launched my business? And when I talk about guys launching, it's like following the system of your company, right? If you're using social media, like, are you really using social media? If you are making connections with people that like, are you really connecting with a lot of different people, right? And so, I think that the season, like for me, people ask me like, when I came to I came to Modere 10 years ago, right? So I've been with 3 companies in the last 25 years, and I helped start the company. And when I joined, like people ask me what I did, like my first 90 days, I brought in 60 people personally. And the way that I did that though, is I had a lot of conversations. And I think sometimes I don't know, we scoot around the idea that we don't really have to talk to many people and we don't really have to have many conversations. But the reality is our business is all about people. Like that's our capital, right? Because it's such a small amount to get started. Like the more people that we talk, like that's the amount of capital that we had to build our business. So I knew for me personally, I'm like, Sarah, if you want to be able to create a great story, like you have to go talk to a lot of people. And I know some of you might be saying, oh, well, that's because you've been involved in the business as long as you had. Guys, this was, that bio story that she just told, this was before the bio story. Okay. So like all the stuff you guys are thinking in your head, you got to throw that out because none of that's true. Okay. All of you guys can build this thing. You all can build a business. But I just got hungry. I was super hungry. I was super willing to do the work. I was very coachable. Those 3 things were I've always done throughout every season of my business, right? And so, I tell people, unfortunately, you can't teach people how to be hungry. You're either hungry or you're not. You can't teach willing. You're either willing to do the work or you're not, right? And sometimes people say they're coachable, but they're really not because they do something different, right? Or they are coachable and they're a great student and they rock it, right? It just kind of depends. So for me, I'm always reminding myself, Sarah, are you being coachable? Even all the years that I've been in this business, are you working, Sarah? Are you willing to do the work? And are you still hungry, right? And I tell people, guys, 10 years ago for me, like I wasn't hungry, like I was starving. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I was starving in the most positive way. Like I was hungry to create something amazing and something just incredible for my husband and for our family, really, right? So I think it's important too, just to understand, someone had actually explained our business kind of in seasons, right? They talked about like winter, spring, summer, and fall. And so sometimes, guys, there were times in my business that I felt like it was a winter. It was rough, right? And maybe some of you guys, maybe you're in a winter right now. You might be saying, "Oh my God, I'm in a winter," right? I get it. But here's the thing that I think is so cool. Okay. Does a winter stay year round? No, I live in Minnesota, okay? Like I feel like winter stays year round, but it doesn't. It's 80 degrees. Monique was asking me, she's like, is it winter? I'm like, no, it's 80 today, right? But the one thing that, guys, that I love is the promise is that the winter doesn't stay forever. After that is spring, right? But I think the most important thing to understand, all of our businesses are cyclical, depending on seasons, depending on times in the economy, depending on our family situation, depending on our job situation, depending on like so much stuff, right? And so I always share with people that there's so many variables to the business, and sometimes it can drive us crazy. And the way for me to actually feel like I can have control in the business is you have to learn how to control the controllables. Okay. Now, there's only really, guys, one or two things that you can control, and the rest you can't control. I know that's not good news. Okay. I know that's not good news. But here's the good news. The good news is what you can control is the conversations that you have. Okay. What you can control are how many people do you invite to look at your business, right? How many people do you invite to, try a product, try your service, right? Like you can control that. Unfortunately, you can't control who says yes or who says no. You can't control who's going to buy. You can't control once they're in, if they're actually going to launch. You can't control that they're not going to quit, right? The only thing that you can control is having those conversations and bringing people in the business. So for me, no matter what season I was in, no matter what, whether I was single, whether I was married, whether I was having kids, whether I was whatever, wherever I was, right? The one thing I knew I could control was the conversation. So my secret sauce, okay, here's the secret sauce. My secret sauce is I got really good with building relationships. I got really good with being intentional with building friendships. I got really good at people knew that I really cared. You know what I mean? They knew that I cared whether they produced or not. My entire team, they know if they recruit somebody, great. If they don't, Sarah Zolecki still loves them. And I just help and I just serve them and I work with them and I love them into their success story, whether it's in a month, whether it's in a year, whether it's in 2 years. I just love on them, right? And so I think, for me, like that's my piece is I'm like, Sarah, how is your skill with building relationships, right? And being really intentional with people. And, for some of us, that might be a little bit more challenging because I know we all have different personalities, right? And some of us that are maybe a little bit more business minded, and you're kind of more about the bottom line and you're more about like, hey, I want to make it happen. I want to get results. Like I hear you. That's me. Okay. But I also realize that, what, Sarah, like you have to be willing to have that small talk. You have to be willing to have those, to build those relationships, because that's kind of what I call the sticky, right? The stickiness of your business is the relationship, the stickiness of like, how are you as a great communicator? How are you when it comes to connecting with people? Like, do you create an environment that feels safe for people, where they still show up every day, even though they're scared, and they still take action, right? Creating that environment for them. And so, I've worked really hard, like crazy hard on that environment and being a good communicator and loving people where they're at and loving them into their success story. And so I think the seasons, I think a lot of times people are so worried about the seasons of where they are, when the reality is the core is the relationships. So if you get really good at building the relationships and get really good at that, being a great communicator and get really good at just loving people where they're at, it doesn't matter when the season is, guys. Like it doesn't matter, right? And I will tell you though, I want to give you guys a couple of tips and some stuff that I did. Okay. So number one, majority of us, I would probably say all of us, want our business to grow faster. Drop me a one if that's you. If you're like, I want my business to grow, I feel like I'm moving like a turtle, right? Or you're like, right? We all want it faster. And I hear you. I was the same way. I mean, it was a painful success story for me. Do you know what I'm saying? But it was so sweet because guess what? So many people can relate to my story. I could be on here forever and I could give you guys example after example. And probably majority of you guys would be like, I can relate to her. I get it. I feel it. So for me, number one, if it's taken you a while to get the success that you want, love that, because you are going to be so much more relatable than the person that comes out of the gate that skyrockets to the top. Because how many people can relate to that? Nobody. Nobody can relate to that, right? And I'm not saying that that's not a great thing, because I have some girlfriends that happened to, and that's awesome. But I think for majority of people, it takes a little bit to kind of what I call catch a gear, right, in this business. And so, there are going to be times that you're going to feel like you're in a desert. There are going to be times that you're going to feel like you're in a dry spell, or maybe even like hit a plateau where you're like, I'm stuck, I'm stuck, I'm stuck. Maybe that's even why you join the group here, right? Because you're like, I'm stuck. I need something. I need, you know what I mean? Give me some stuff, right? That can maybe help me like jump out of the mud that I feel like I'm stuck in right now. So here's one thing that I did that really helped me, and I still do it to this day, because I was in plateaus a lot and I was stuck a lot, mainly because I was stuck of like the junk that was in my head I had to work through. But I think, looking at those different seasons, be encouraged and really understand those are the most amazing learning periods of your life. Okay. Like those periods are where you learn. You're not learning when you're skyrocketing. You know what I mean? Like you're learning when you go through those plateaus. And so when I am going through some of this stuff, I've like tricked my brain now to get excited to be like, oh my gosh, Sarah, you're going to be learning a whole lot right now. Right. Like that's what I do. Sarah, you're going to be learning like a whole lot right now. But then also too, here's two questions I always ask myself. And I almost probably do this weekly because we're all going through stuff in our life, in our business. But number one, instead, it's so easy, guys, for us to ask, what am I doing wrong? What's wrong with me? Why isn't this working? Right? I have cried my eyes many, 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 many times in this business where I'm like, what's wrong with me? You know what I'm saying? And so here's the thing. Nothing's wrong with you, first of all. Okay. Like nothing is wrong with you. It's just part of like how our business grows. And so two questions I ask. Number one, instead of saying what's wrong, because that's pretty easy to go negative, I ask myself, what is working? What is working? Right. And there's always something that's working for us. Maybe we're doing a great job with finding new friends. Maybe we're doing a great job with getting bookings. Maybe we're doing a great job on social. Maybe we're doing a great job with like getting out of our comfort zone. Maybe we did a great job because we got a new customer, or we brought a brand new person on board, or whatever it is, right? Remember, like every little thing is a win. Don't be so quick to brush those off. Okay, especially for those of you that are like big achievers, you got these big lofty goals, which is awesome, but you forget about all the little wins along the way. Don't forget those, because those little wins are the ones that's what actually creates your confidence, right? That's what's going to create your confidence long term. It's kind of like if you imagine like a chain link, right? A chain link, right? And it's pretty strong. The way that you could create a chain link in your business, really, which is kind of like a confidence chain, the way that that's going to happen, guys, is through all these little wins. Talking to someone that you are afraid to talk to, right? Getting out of your comfort zone, maybe participating in a power hour or whatever it is, right? There's so many great actions that we do for our businesses, right? But number one, what is working? All right, first question. Second question is, what am I learning? What am I learning, right? And so those questions I ask myself all the time, and it's so good because it helps me like redirect my focus, right? And just focus in on the goodness and the things that are awesome in my business. Now, second tip I want to give you guys, this is probably my biggest breakthrough. Okay. Well, second biggest breakthrough is understanding that you are exactly where you're supposed to be right now in your business. For some of you, you do not want to hear that. Okay. You are exactly where you're supposed to be right now, because the next rank or the next title or whatever it is in your company, you're not necessarily ready for that. Now, don't get offended. The reason I'm telling you that is that there's some lesson, some experience, something you need to learn that's going to prepare you for that next level. Okay. That saved me because for so long, it is so painfully long to even talk about this. I can actually giggle about it now, but I definitely cried about it a lot. Is that I tended to white knuckle my business so much, right? Like white knuckling, right? How many guys like when you're driving in a car, car and you're in bad weather, or you're like riding on a ride at an amusement park, you're like white knuckling it, right? Many of us, we white knuckle our business. Some of you guys might be white knuckling it right now. You want it to happen so bad. You're like, oh, I want it to happen so bad. But here's the thing: when you white knuckle your business, you leave no room for abundance in your life. You know what I mean? You leave no room for just such great stuff. You're like holding on to it so bad, right? And so I want to give you permission to like release that. Take your business serious, but don't take yourself so serious. Most of us, me included, like I was the worst at this. I was so serious about my business. And the reality is most people get in our business, guys, is they're looking for an escape. They're looking for something social. They're stressed out their job. And maybe they're stressed raising kids right now, right? Or whatever it is, they get involved in this because they're like, this is kind of fun. This is a different outlet for them. So if you are feeling like my business is heavy, you got to look at like, am I like white knuckling it? And once I just kind of like release that pressure of like these big crazy goals and this rank that I wanted to hit so bad, and I just started to be like, every day, as long as I'm getting better, every day, as long as I'm doing some things to move my business forward, I gave myself some slack. You know what I mean? I cut myself some slack. And what happened is that, guys, I had so many people that just started flooding and getting connected with me because I was fun and I wasn't so serious and I wasn't so intense. Right. And I just decided just to go in the flow, and I wasn't so worried about hitting that rank or, whatever. Maybe I knew that when I hit it, I hit it and it was going to be bittersweet at that point. And here's the thing I want to share with you too, guys. Nobody remembers when you really hit the rank anyways. Okay. I know we think that everyone does, but if I ask about different people on my team, like when did you hit this rank? When did you hit this rank? Like, I don't even remember. They don't remember. I don't even remember when I hit the top of the company. Like, I don't remember the month. I don't remember I just don't. And so don't get so caught up in the details of like, oh my God, people are going to know. No, they're going to know like when you hit it, it's awesome. You're excited. It's a great story, right? And you get to share it. But I just feel like, when you can release that pressure of building through these seasons and just, stepping into having fun, stepping into like choosing to have joy every day through the plateaus, through the ebbs and flows, right? Through the times that your, best friend joins and then 2 months later she quits, right? Or I sign up I'm excited about a, prospect that I brought on board, and then all of a sudden they go into the witness protection program, like all the stuff that you guys are going through, like I go through it too still, right? Nothing different in the business, but just understand the seasons are the seasons. As long as you are working super hard with your relationships and you work hard on being a great communicator. And I also feel like to just understand, like through all those seasons, as long as you're still planting the seeds, stuff's going to pop up. You know what I mean? Stuff's going to bloom, stuff's going to come to fruition, but you got to keep planting. What happens a lot of times is people are like, oh my God, I'm in a drought in my business. And I always ask them, what did you do 60 days ago? What did you do 90 days ago? Because typically what you did 60 to 90 days ago, that's what's showing up 90 days later. So a lot of times people, when I do coaching with them, they're like, oh, they're like, oh, I've been working hard the last 30 days and I'm so frustrated. Why aren't things kicking into gear? And I'm like, well, what'd you do 60 days prior or 90 days prior? And they're like, well, I kind of wasn't really doing anything. I wasn't really being that consistent. I hadn't really made a decision yet. And I was like, well, that's why, like, you can't look at it and go 30 days, what's happening? It's really about what's the effort that you put in, 60, 90, even 120 days ago, right? And so that's why I feel that being consistent, whatever that looks like. Guys, some of you guys are working your business in the nooks and crannies of your life while you're raising kids, while you're raising grandkids. Maybe you're working 2 jobs. I mean, 99.9% of people in direct sales and network marketing, It's a part-time gig for them. But I just want to share with you the hours that you put in, just really make that sacred, because that's what's going to really allow you guys to stand out from everybody else, whatever that looks like. Whether it's, I guarantee these guys, I mean, they're such pros. I guarantee you that Monique and Becky have talked about time blocking. They've talked about scheduling. They've talked about, all that good stuff. Right. And so, that piece is really, really, really important, but it's important not to be lackadaisical about it. Right. Like, because it's easy to be hot and then cold and then hot and then cold when it comes to that. But that's what you'll see why, if your seeds aren't flourishing, while you're freaking out because of the different seasons you're in. For me, I just know that as long as I'm building relationships, I'm asking people to look at my business, I'm having conversations, right? I'm controlling my controllables, then I feel like I'm pretty even keel every day, 365 days a year, instead of like up, down, meaning attitude, up, down, right? I'm really high, I'm really low, right? Some of you guys want to learn how to manage, just your emotions a little bit better, right? In this business, especially as women, it's really kind of a tough deal to kind of start figuring out, is the emotional maturity part of the business. And it's like how to make sure your highs aren't so high and your lows aren't so low is really that consistency of the relationship building. You know what I mean? That piece for me, hands down, is what keeps the train moving, right? And again, keeps me in conversations, keeps me, asking people to look at the business, because I am proactively always out there, doing those things. So, so just understand, building through seasons, guys, is like, it's no different than anything else, but the more solid you can get, the seasons don't really matter. Like, I know, I think for me, I'm just aware of when the seasons come, and you're going to know too. You're going to be like, oh, wow, this is fall season, man, things are rocking, right? I'm harvesting like crazy. This is great. And then you're going to feel and know when it turns into winter, and you're like, ooh, it's kind of getting winter around here. It's kind of bare. It's kind of like, what's going on, right? But you don't flinch, because right? Because number one, that it's winter, but number two, you don't flinch because that spring is coming, right? And then it turns into summer and all that good stuff. So, so Becky, Monique, I'm so excited to get a chance to like hang out with you guys. I'm just really proud of everything you guys have done. What an incredible community you built, a really safe place for people to come into their own and just really flourish in such a big way. But let's open it up for a little bit of Q&A. So I don't know if you guys, I don't know, Becky, if you would like people to like raise their hand or just put it in the chat. What do you guys like to typically do for that?
Well, first of all, thank you so much. Oh my gosh, I took so many notes, and you're such just a bright light, I think, in this industry.
Oh, thank you.
And very encouraging, because I think you're right. Like, so many times, and I understand the why behind it, but so many times companies will only spotlight for a while. It seems like the unicorn, the person who came in and, oh, look how fast they did it, and you can too. And while, like, yeah, cool, anyone can that comes in, they have that opportunity, but it's not normal.
Yeah.
And so I love so much what you shared around that concept. So okay. Yeah. If you guys want to raise your hand, if you want to unmute, we'll take a couple of questions. You're welcome to ask, or you can just put it in the chat as well as on Facebook. And then we probably have time for just like 2 or 3. So, Lindsay.
Looks like Lindsay.
Yeah.
You want to unmute?
Like.
Yeah. Hey, Sarah. Thank you. This was very encouraging and exactly what I needed. And I didn't even realize it.
Yay!
But my question is, and I think I know the answer, but I'm curious to hear, what does building relationships consistently look like for you?
So I think for me, I'm just like every day. I mean, I am such a simple girl. You know what I mean? I was a nanny, for goodness sake. I mean, like my whole life, when someone says, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I'm like, kindergarten teacher. They're like, okay, she has a simple mind. So, but for me, it's just really about every day I make a friend. I mean, that is so that is and two, I have one of these funny things that I always tell people. I'm like, you will be hard to outfriend me, because that's just really like how I work. Like, I am out there just giving value, creating relationships, just getting to know people wherever I go as I live my life, whether I'm on the soccer field with my kids, whether I'm at, my daughter's gymnastics, whether I am doing stuff in my community or my church, whether I'm doing stuff on social media, right? I'm in people's, DMs and Messenger, and just really getting to know people. I'm just one of those people that I'm like, when I, especially on social media, I'll give you guys one of my tips that I do. So when I meet people on social media and I connect with them in Messenger, my very first thing, and I actually might have even done this with Becky, now that I think about it, I mean, I don't really know, but I always am like, hey, it's great to meet you. It looks like, we've got a lot of different things in common. And I'm like, what, I'm excited to get to know you and your story. Tell me your story. And people love that. People are like, oh my God, I'm going to tell you my story. And people, it's crazy. Like they tell me your story. And that's kind of one of my lines. And I'm like, tell me your story. Like I was with somebody yesterday, and I actually at my son's soccer game, and I didn't really know one of the parents on the sideline, and we were just some small talk about our kids, and I'm like, well, tell me, like, what's your story? You know what I mean? And she just kind of looked at me, and I think the reason she kind of looked at me is because most people don't even really talk to each other anymore. You know what I mean? And she was like, wow, this girl actually really gives a rip about me, and she just started talking, and it was so fun just to like build those relationships. But I really get to know people on a personal level. I imagine them. I know this is kind of a weird analogy, but I'm kind of weird. Like everybody is kind of like an onion. And it's like, I like to peel the different layers of the onion. And so for me, I'm like, well, Becky, my goal is like to know Becky, where I'm like, what makes her tick? What keeps her up at night? What is she scared of? What is she excited about? What is she passionate about? And people love it. They're like, she really cares like about me. And so I think because of that, I really go the extra mile on building the relationships, where I think our lives are so fast paced and so busy that people just don't stop to really care about people. And I just choose to do the opposite.
Oh yeah, that was so good.
Yeah, I just feel like that's not the norm. It's
Oh.
not the norm. And so when people ask you, what's your story? Tell me about your story. They're taken back by that.
Yeah.
And
it's so fun. It's not like I'm like going out to like, I need to recruit you. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just so weird. I just like build a friendship. And a lot of times too, like people that I meet in person because of social media, it's so easy then to transition to get connected on social media, right? Because then they can snoop around and see what you're all about and all that, right? And so that's when I'm like, hey, are you on social? They're like, yeah. I'm like, let's stay connected. They're like, okay, like that's what I do. And then we get connected, and I get to see what they are up to, and they can see what I'm up to. And then sometimes it leads to, someone buying product or coming on board, or I made a new friend, right?
oh, that's so
I
good.
Oh, go ahead, Becky.
No, I was just saying, I'm like, oh, that's so good. I love to tell your story, because I think by nature too, people love to talk about themselves.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's an easy conversation starter, I think, for anyone, whether and it's not being like, who buy this thing or do this thing or join my team. It's instead just like the connection, and when you have connection and community, that's when the conversion happens, when they feel connected to, I love that. Monique, were you going to add something else?
Well, I was just going to say, it also reminds me of the abundance mindset. Like if you have that approach where you're like, I'm here to build relationships, it's out of that abundance. And that's where, out of that overflow is how you end up. Like if you plant those seeds and you're building those connections, like you will see your business grow, versus having that scarcity mindset of every person that I meet, I've got to turn this person into a customer, or I need to bring them onto my team. Like having that kind of mindset, first of all, people are going to read through that very quickly, but it's also that scarcity mentality. And I love that your approach is connection first, like that relationship building. So the next question was from Melanie. She said, I would love some of your reaching out verbiage. So I feel like this kind of answers that question of, do you have anything else that you would add on top of that as far as reaching out?
I think the biggest thing, for me personally, I really make sure that you like know people, especially if it's on social media. Like you guys know, we've all experienced the gross messaging. Do you know what I'm saying? The hey girl, this whatever. It's just I just am like, dude, you need some coaching. Anyways, that's a whole nother story. But so for I think for me, like I really make sure that I get to know people first before I even get in their messenger. So like take time and look on their profile. Are they married? Do they have kids? Like, what do they love? What are they passionate about? What are their, what are some of their views? What do they do for work? Right. A lot of you guys, you can catch so much of that stuff in their stories, right? And so much of that stuff on their, what they're posting. And so before that, typically here's my rule. I actually like to either like or love. I'm a lover. I'd much rather, I love on everybody's post. I don't like on anyone's post, just so you guys know, huge tip. Like, people love to get loved on. They don't love the thumbs up. Who loves the thumbs up? Not me. I think a thumbs up is lame, but that's just my thing. I'm like, give me the love all day long and I will give you the love back. Right. So, but I kind of have a rule, a 3-time rule where I always make sure to love and comment on 3 different things of theirs. And then I'll get in Messenger, because then they've already seen my stuff. They've already seen, they're like, oh, this girl's commenting, this girl, right? So then it doesn't feel like it's such a cold approach then. And typically when I do message guys though, it's always about something I saw, whether it is, and typically what happens too, because you know how the algorithm works, it's like, hey, if you like on their stuff, then obviously they go, oh, Becky and Sarah must know each other. I'm going to show them more of each other's stuff, right? So then, if I'm liking on some of Becky's stuff, guess what we typically do? Becky's going to start going to my wall and she's going to start liking on my stuff, right? So when that does happen, that's, for me, it's such an easy transition then to get in Messenger and say, Becky, thanks so much for loving on my post. You know what I mean? I know I've had a chance to, see some of the things on your profile, and I'm excited to get to know you. Tell me your story. Guys, that is all I do. That is my stuff right there. So I mean, and again, it as a woman, it is such a natural place, guys, for us. It is not awkward. It is not weird. It is not scary where you're like, I don't know how you can get in Messenger with someone, right? For me, it's a very organic, kind of a natural process then. So I never feel weird getting in a DM ever, because I've kind of done some of that I've done that front end work already, right?
Yeah. So Lindsay,
you guys are getting you guys are getting my juicy secrets. It's all good. It's all good. I'm excited to pay it forward. So it's great.
Well, we appreciate it. We really do. We had a question in the chat. She said, this seems like a silly question, but do you track anything?
Oh my God, I'm a tracking fanatic. That is not a silly question. If you don't track your business, you don't have a business. You guys hear that? Okay. You're just Mickey Mousing around, no matter, even if you're just getting started or even if you have nobody in your team. I led myself and tracked myself for 3 years till I got 1 person in my business. Okay. So I definitely track, because if you don't track, you can't measure against anything. Right. So then what happens is we get super frustrated in our business. We're like, I'm so frustrated in my business, but you can't pinpoint anything because you're not tracking anything. Right. So I actually have a little PDF. I'll actually send to you, Becky. You can throw this in there for them. But in there, it's actually questions that I do with people that I bring on board every month to kind of do a little bit of accountability and find out where they're at. But you guys can do it for yourselves. So it's just questions that you can ask yourself, like, how many people did I talk to this month, right? Or you could say this week, right? Or you could even do a daily thing, right? How many conversations did I start? How many new friends did I meet, right? How many people did I invite to look at my business? How many people did I invite to did I share with about product or service, right? How many people did I get connected with my upline, or how many people did I get enrolled? So I definitely track all of that. And, oh my goodness, here's the one thing I tell people always are like, well, what's the best tracker to use? And I'm like, guys, the best tracker to use is the one that you actually use. Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else guilty? I have calendars like you wouldn't believe. I'm like, ooh, this is a good calendar. And I order the calendar and I don't follow through with it, right? Or a planner. Planner is worse. Planner is even worse than a calendar for me. I got every planner under the sun, right? And so you got to figure out for you, what tracking system is going to work for me that I'm actually going to use every day, right? Some of you guys, you might be a pen and paper kind of girl, you know what I mean? And you're like, the idea of having a CRM system online or on your phone, you're like, right? And then some of you guys are like, pen and paper, that's weird. It just depends on how you retain and how you learn and what works for you. But I definitely track. I'm a pen and paper girl, you know, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm gonna be 50. I don't know. Like I just how I am. I like to write it down and see it. I'm a checklist girl. I'll put something on my list, even if it wasn't on my list, just so I could cross it off and say I did it. Anybody else guilty? I love it. I'm like, oh, I feel good.
Yes.
All right. I'm like, yeah. So I have a tracker that I just order on Amazon that I love. That's just a really simple one. I've used it for 14 years, long time, nothing fancy. It's called, oh my gosh, activity logbook or something like that, or sales logbook. And I just kind of tweak it to kind of make it my own. It's not even direct sales or network marketing. It's like, I don't even know, 15 bucks on Amazon. But you definitely want to track for sure. And maybe your upline or the team that you're in, you guys have your own tracking systems or what have you. Again, get plugged in with those or whatever. But tracking, that is not a silly question. That's actually an excellent question. Yes, track. Because then you can see where you're at. Otherwise, you can never, ever get better if you don't know. Because that's the thing. Like if you're like, oh, I haven't been getting any enrollments, I'm feeling frustrated. Then if you go back and answer those questions, you can typically see where the holes are in your business. And that's when you can reach out and go, I need help, right? That's when you're like, I got to figure out, okay, I'm not doing a great job with inviting. Like, how am I slipping through the cracks on that? Or my follow-up, like, oh my gosh, I didn't do any follow-up this week. Like, how do I need to get better at that, right? So I think that's where you'll be able to work on the different skill sets that you feel like are not as strong as some of the other ones that you have.
Yeah, so good. Monique, did you want to say something? Sorry.
Okay. Sarah, we could have you like another hour because I have this list of questions. I have 2 pages of notes and a list of questions. But I do want to ask 2 questions that I feel like a lot of our clients that come up for a lot of our clients that I would love for you to share. So,
okay.
First of all, I would love for you to share when you kept saying, I had all this stuff I had to work through, the head junk.
Yes.
Do you have specific examples of, there's this one roadblock that I had to overcome, or there's this one lie that I was believing? Because I feel like a lot of the work that those in this community are working through is their mindset and really, coming to that place. So what do you feel like? That's my first question. And when you answer that, I'll ask you the second one.
Okay. Oh my gosh, that's so good. I think I don't know. I had a lot of limiting beliefs. I really did, even though I was so excited about this business. I think for me, there's either like the fear of failure or the fear of success, right? For me, it was never the fear of failure. It was always a fear of success. I feel like that was one of the reasons that it took me so long to enroll people in my business, is I think deep down, I was really afraid, like if I enrolled someone in my business, like what if I didn't do a good job with bringing them on board? Like, what if I couldn't be the leader they wanted me to be? Like, I don't even really know how to be a leader. I was 21 at the time. You know what I mean? I'm like, what does a leader look like? Like, what's my responsibilities? Like, so like the fear of success, but that even can continue as you start building a team, right? It can continue once you have 20 people or 100 people or 1,000, where you're just like, oh my gosh, like I'm going to the next level. It's kind of scary, And so I think that was one for me. And then I think just understanding, like, Sarah, like when you bring these guys on, like you're going to have all the tools that you need at that point, and you're just going to continue to grow and get better and work through all that stuff. And I think another one for me, I mean, this is the reason I've shared this quite a few times before, but so it's kind of a weird deal, but so I don't have any direct sales background, right? All network marketing for 25 years. So my first couple companies that I was in, like my sponsor was a male, my upline was a dude. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I had no women mentorship. And I love guys. I'm married to one, you know what I mean? Like great. But I will tell you, we built different. And I didn't realize how different it was, because there was just such a massive disconnect, where I was trying to build a business with a guy because I was emanating what they did and did what they did. And, there's like a famous quote out there that says, you can be impressive, but not likable. And that was me, because I built these friendships, but yet there was still a disconnect because I wasn't showing up as Sarah Zolecki. I was showing up as whoever else. And I really had to ask myself the question, like, Sarah, are you okay with you? And it had to be a yes. You know what I mean? I had to be okay with being quirky and being weird and silly and not being perfect and all of that. when I finally was able to come to that conclusion and be okay with it, I had fun and people loved it and they saw me and they saw the authenticity with who I was and I was transparent and just everything changed for me because I just was like, you know, like there's only one me, right? There's only one you. There's not, so trying to show up on, on these Zooms and trying to be Becky, guess what? Becky's already taken. Monique's already taken. Sarah's Zolecki's already taken. You know what I mean? And so I think, for me, that was a big, big piece. I mean, that's really where I had my big breakthrough was just authentically showing up as me and being okay with that. And then it was just awesome, after that. But, I think for a lot of people, I mean, limiting beliefs will come and go kind of depending on the different phases that you're at in the business. I think probably the main one that that I hear over and over and over again is the not good enough. You know what I mean? For women, like feeling not good enough, not equipped, you know what I mean? Not feeling inadequate. But I think just really understanding like the beautiful part about this business is the growing piece. I get excited every day because I know that I'm growing. I know when I'm going through a growth spurt, I can feel it. It's exciting and it's scary at the same time. I'm like, this is awesome. But I'm like scared out of my mind, but I keep moving forward every day, right? And still taking this as I'm like, I'm so scared. And then in the same breath, I'm like, but I'm still doing this. You know what I mean? And I think that, that's the cool thing about, about our business guys is like, where else do you go? Can you go in a field, or an industry, whatever it is, profession, where they focus so much on you becoming the best version of you? Nowhere, nowhere except here. And so like that to me is like the money's great, the lifestyle is great, all of that. But that sense of accomplishment and just kind of like, just stepping in to just the best version of yourself, because it's going to allow you to show up as a better parent, as a better spouse, as a better citizen, as a better friend, right? And ultimately at that point have a bigger impact, right? So man, if you're not already proud, you need to be so proud that you're in this profession, because we do things that no other profession does. And I'm just so honored that I get to be a part of it every day.
Yeah. That's so good. Okay, I know we're cutting it close, but I just want to ask this one question because I know a lot of our clients have asked this. So when it comes to leadership, you made a comment when you were talking about that you were in a position where you were starving. You're like, I wasn't just hungry, I was starving.
Yeah.
And you said people are either hungry or they're not. And so I would love for you to share for those who are leaders, and it's that $1 million question of, okay, how do you develop other leaders? How do you make somebody in a sense hungry? I would love to hear your perspective on that.
I mean, you can't. I mean, my whole thing is like when I bring a brand new person on board, like I have these crucial conversations with them, where it's like, hey, my job is to help you become independent as fast as possible. Like, do you want to become independent? Or like, yes. I'm like, how soon? Yes. I make them tell me. Right. And then from there, I just let them know, listen, there's just only 3 things that I ask. I ask that you're hungry, I ask that you're willing to do the work, and I ask that you stay coachable at all times, and then I also let them know too about you're going to have good days and bad days and times when people want to throw the towel in. And how do you want me to, what do you want me? I joke around, like, what do you want me to do with you when that happens? Because then I know how to work with them as a leader. Right. And I know, you know what I mean? And I think it's important too, because when you have that crucial conversation with the people that you bring on board, it goes from them being a recruit to you having a business relationship. Big difference.
And you're setting the expectation.
Yeah.
You're setting the expectation of, I love that you're telling them like, hey, you're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days, instead of somebody having that bad day and they're surprised. You're letting them know this is part of what business is like.
Well, yeah, you got to set them up to win, because if you set them up to win, when that does happen, guess what? They don't flinch. They don't freak out. They're like, oh yeah, you know what? They're like, oh, Monique told me this was going to happen. You know what I mean? Aubrey told me this was going to happen. Right. They don't freak out yet. But if you don't set them up, and then I don't know, something so small and silly happens and someone says boo, like all of a sudden you're like, what happened to Susie? And like, she's like completely vanished. You know what I mean? So I think it's important because what I see happen a lot is I see someone will sign someone up and then immediately just try to throw them into their system. And I'm like, okay, systems are great, but a lot of times systems aren't human interaction. And for me, it's very, very important. You have to slow people down to speed them up. You got to slow people down before they can speed up, right? So that this one piece that I see is always that seems to be always missing from people is that you have to set people up to win before you throw them into that system. Otherwise you throw them into that system and they don't do anything, it's worthless. Their daily method of operation is worthless. All of that stuff is because you didn't set them up from the beginning. If you set them up from the beginning, oh my gosh, they're off. You know what I mean? They're off to the races.
Oh my word. This was so good. So I think just one final thought. I would love to hear your perspective on, now that you especially once you began to, I don't want to say outgrow, right, your peers and those around you, like, what did you feel like helped you continue to grow? Because I feel like so many times, and I saw this, I'm sure you do too, right? Like people will get to a certain place in their business and they feel like they may not realize, but they're like, oh, I know it all, or like, I'm good, I don't need whatever, but like, there's so much abundance out there and you are a perfect example of it. And I would just love to know through your lens, like, what is it that you have done to continue to grow?
Well, I mean, you have to always stay a student. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it's there, like every level is so different in our business and our life. And, I mean, you guys have all heard the phrase, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in trouble. You know what I'm saying? So you got to look at your circle right now. And if you're the smartest one, you got to figure out how fast can I get in a room where I feel like I'm the dumbest one, I don't even like to use the word dumb, but you guys know what I'm talking about. So, so for me, and that's scary, and that's scary to admit that, and scary to take the step, because it feels good to be the smartest person in the room. You know what I mean? You're like, this is great. Of course, this is awesome. But to not be the smartest person, that's where the stretching and the growing and this, getting out of your comfort zone and doing things that you don't want to do. And you know what I mean? Like all of that, right? All that kind of like the feet to the fire, right? Type of stuff. But that's the stuff that's going to really, allow you to grow. And, I've learned to fall in love with like the unknown. I think, for a long time, until I really worked on myself, like I was always afraid of the unknown. And I really have learned how to fall in love with fear. I mean, as crazy as that sounds, I mean, again, focusing on shifting perspectives. I think for me, because of personal development over the years, I really shift perspectives on so much stuff now that I just see it through a totally different lens. So whenever I do have different fears that are coming up, that's when I just take a pause. And then I also get excited, because when I do have that fear in my mind, it's kind of like a green light just went off. And that's typically when I'm afraid, that's when I'm like, Sarah, this means you need to do this. You need to go, And so, so I think for me, like I've learned how to fall in love with the unknown, because it's just the exciting thing of like the possibility of what's getting ready to happen on the other side of that. Right. So, but I think it's really important, guys. I mean, my whole career, and still to this day, I teach people, I'm like, you got to stay around the fire, right? Long enough until you become the fire. And that's really what happened to me, guys. I stayed around it through thick and thin, through times that I didn't understand what was happening in my business, the dry spells, the ebbs and flows, the good, the bad, the wonderful, all of the above. But, for me personally, I just made a pact with myself to stay around the fire, meaning around the community, around the people, around the, whatever that looks like for you, that feels good. That's the white hot. Like, make sure that you stay around that, because it's a very easy to slip out of that fire. Think about a bonfire. When you're standing right up next to it, how hot is it? It's so hot, right? But here's what's so crazy about this is that if you just take one step back, how many of you guys realize that temperature changes immediately? One step. And then you take another step back and it's immediate. And what those one steps represent is it represents maybe being like, oh, I'll just catch the recording of that team Zoom, or I won't participate in the power. No big deal. They don't care. I'll just, watch the replay. Or I don't know if, I'll skip. I'm kind of, I don't know if I want to do, some reach outs today or tomorrow, right? It's just those little tiny things that are so subtle, but what's happening, people don't realize very quickly. They're like, wow, this feels cold. And it's because all of a sudden you stepped away from that fire. So for me, I always have looked at, Sarah, stay around the fire, stay around the fire, stay around the fire. Because that's what's going to always, your fire is going to look different as you grow, right? So like for me, my fire, right, the people that I look up to, that my mentors, like, I mean, it's crazy, like in a good way, like big vision and possibilities and all that stuff. And so for me, like I'm just, I as a person, like I'm always focused on that fire, because it's just gonna, it's gonna push me to keep on going, right? And just keep working on myself.